I am a gun owner. I'm also the father of 3 young children. Today, many people in America believe that this is a recipe for disaster. They think that it's only a matter of time before the unthinkable happens. These people believe that I am irresponsible to have both firearms and children in the same house, and that I care more about my guns than I care about the safety of my family. Everyone is entitled to their opinion. I'm not even going to bother trying to change their minds. The anti-gun crowd is committed to their beliefs, and I'd just be wasting my time debating the issues with them. This video is for people who want to hear both sides of the issue and decide for themselves. I'd also like to share with other gun owners the steps I am taking to protect the family from the dangers posed by keeping a firearm in our home. There's no way to predict what a criminal will do in an attempt to get what you have and they want. A professional criminal has already made a decision to disregard the laws set by our society, and therefore they see themselves as not being subject to the same restrictions as honest citizens. A criminal feels no less guilt about breaking into your home than most people feel about going a few miles over the speed limit. The criminal's only thought process is about risk. The risk of getting caught, shot, or killed, as opposed to getting what they want, whether it's your possessions, your money, or your family. One of the reasons I own a gun is to increase the sense of risk involved in the mind of a criminal. It's because I love my family that I don't want to expose them to the terror of being robbed or abused. I cherish my family, so I am willing to put myself between them and the danger. I'm more capable of doing this while armed. There will always be arguments and statistics on this issue. None of these are relevant. I will not debate the safety of my family. I will acknowledge that the very tool I use to protect my family can be dangerous itself. A gun in the hands of a child can result in a soul-wrenching tragedy that unfortunately has occurred several times too often. We can play the statistics game again and again and discuss how cars, knives, chemicals, falls, and power tools are involved in a higher percentage of accidents around the home than guns are. But the topic is guns. Just as we should protect our children from those other things, we need to concentrate on this topic under scrutiny. I take several steps to protect my kids. I try to imagine every scenario possible and prepare my kids for each one of them. So I teach my kids about guns. Of course, that's a wise thing to do, to teach your kids about guns. But do you teach them to fear the guns? Do you teach them that guns are a mysterious object that should never be touched? Or do you teach them to be smart about a dangerous tool? Children are naturally curious. They also learn by touching objects. How many times have you said, "Don't touch that" to your kid, and just to have them touch it anyway? What do you think guns would be any different? I'm teaching my kids to be familiar with guns. Remove all curiosity of guns, and there will be less of a desire to seek them out. My kids were once curious about the vacuum cleaner. A little familiarity with that, and they avoided it as much as possible. The bottom line is I don't want my kids to fear guns. I want them to fear the wrath of their father if they do not follow the rules. So our family has some special rules about guns. The first one is that if one of my kids wants to see my gun, they have to ask first. That sounds like an obvious rule, but the first part is not as important as the second part. The second part of this rule is that I am never allowed to refuse any request from my kids to examine, touch, or hold my gun. My children know that if they want to see my gun, I am not allowed to say no. I have to comply. This also ensures that I'm able to unload, clear, and check my gun for safety before they handle it. I then provide direct guidance on how to handle the firearms as they hold it. They initially took advantage of this privilege, asking to see my gun at the most inappropriate times, but I always complied. They don't have to ask as much as they used to, but they also know that they never have to sneak a peek at my gun, because Dad cannot say no. To support justification of these rules, I insist that my kids reflect and discuss news reports of previous failures to learn from them. It's unfortunate in our society that gun accidents do happen. These accidents are always a direct result of mistakes and lack of responsibility by an adult gun owner. When I hear about one of these tragedies, I use it as a learning tool for my kids. I show them the news story and use it as a topic of discussion. I quiz them on what they think led to the accident, where the failure and responsibility was, what should have been done, and what did not happen. This shows them that the danger is real. This shows them that I am serious, and that shows them the repercussions of disregarding gun safety. Are guns also a family secret? My kids are not to discuss its existence with any of their friends. One wouldn't think of enforcing this rule, but don't forget, kids will talk about anything. And then there's the friend's house scenario. You can teach your own kids everything about gun safety in your home, but what about the neighbor's kids? What about when their little friend asks them if they want to see something really cool? How do I prepare them for that? Well, you can't really, but I can try to control how my kids react. So I put them through some drills. I asked them what they would do if a friend brought out a gun, real or not. Then I told them what I wanted them to do. I told them that if a friend pulls out a gun, don't say anything, just leave. The important thing is not to say anything. Don't make threats. Don't ask them to put it away. Don't challenge them. Just stop talking, turn around, and leave. My point here is that my greatest fear is that any question or comment from my kids will be followed by the neighbor's kids saying that the gun is not loaded, followed by an effort to prove it by pulling the trigger. This is my nightmare, and this is how I prepare my kids to handle it. I tell my kids to go out into the front yard, find an adult, any adult, and tell them that their friend has a gun and this concerns them. I'm thinking that any little friend will not bring that gun out of the house into the front yard, and that any adult will be freaked out enough to ensure that the parent responsible for that little bastard pays the price for their lack of responsibility. Finally, never trust your kids when it comes to guns. Never trust them, never assume anything. I do trust my children, but I'll never let this fool me into becoming complacent. Kids are kids, and they'll stretch the limits of your authority every time. Eventually, my kids will earn my trust enough to drive a car, stay out of it later, go out on dates. But it won't be until the day arrives that they are parents themselves and hold their own baby in their arms that I will be sure that they understand why I was so strict about gun safety. It'll be then that I'll feel comfortable enough with my kids around firearms. Yeah, that seems like a while, but I love my kids that much. These are just a few of the many steps I take to ensure the safety of my family. Gun safety should always be an ongoing process in your home. The more you talk about it, the more your child will understand just how important the issue is to their parents. Thanks for listening.